about 25 hours when I suffered through an unsuspecting battle with some unsavory beetle-looking characters back in the Shroud. I plopped back into my chair and exhaled a long drawn-out sigh, carrying with it the pains and groans at the thought of the corpse run I'd have to deal with to retrieve my possessions. Don't get me wrong, before this defeat, I had succeeded in epic battles, taking down opponents in seemingly impossible situations. But I was unmotivated and simply too tired to continue. Honestly, that wasn't even the straw that broke the camel's back. I was back in my base, taking stock of my items. I needed to gather all my goodies to head out on my corpse run to recover what had been dropped. I emptied out my bags into their respective chests, clearing up space in my inventory so that I would fill up my bag again with ores, furs, woods, and other resources found both in the Shroud and outside of it. But then, there it was, staring at me in the face. I had run out of twigs, and I needed to stock up on arrows for my ranger build, and that's when it happened. I not only had ran out of twigs, but also metal pieces and ores. This meant that not only did my corpse run have to rely on less ideal weapons, but I also had the task of gathering my items back again so that I could finally go back to the base, make my arrows to stock up on my ammo for my primary weapon and build. I was left so conflicted by my experience that I unceremoniously decided to end my journey with Enshrouded right there. Yet despite having shared this, stepping back and looking at my experience as a whole and taking into consideration 30 hours that I put into this game so far, I totally recommend this game, and here's why. Enshrouded is a survival RPG base builder and exploration simulator. Immediately upon playing it, you get the Breath of the Wild vibes due to the artistic tones and structures you see out in the world, and the next game you also may draw a comparison to is Valheim. I've seen some memes online describing Enshrouded as a Valheim DLC, and that wouldn't be far from the truth. Enshrouded lets you start your experience in a new world as a solo journey, or even creating a world for multiplayer and have friends join in. When you tie in that Enshrouded has RPG mechanics in the form of talent trees, weapons, and armor, it begins to really set itself apart from the Breath of the Wild and Valheim's and stands on its own as what I consider an ASMR survival game. When I tell you that this game puts me at ease, it's no joke, gentlemen. The ambient music playing in the background and the vast unexplored world waiting to be uncovered was an invitation that I simply couldn't decline. You start off in the world much like any other game in this genre. You're alone, without a shirt on your back, and you're pretty much a broke boy who can't even afford Pokemon's cookies at this point. But fret not, gentlemen, for one of the great things about this game is its tutorial system that easily guides you from humble beginnings found in a standard pickaxe to exploring the dreaded Shroud and taking on the undiscovered world and its enemies. Unlike some of the other run-of-the-mill survival games, you aren't just building everything from one workbench. You'll be given missions to unlock, more of what the game has to offer by rescuing NPCs that will serve as not only quest givers but also vendors, which allow you to craft the more complex, useful and necessary items that you'll need to progress through the game's challenges. Here's where Enshrouded began to lose me. Progressing at Enshrouded doesn't feel meaningful enough. Each upgrade I can craft is an incremental upgrade and doesn't end up feeling substantial. Yes, I can tell the difference between one upgraded weapon from another, but the difference is not impactful and it's not entirely satisfying. Progress in the game should feel rewarding and significant, but upgrades don't feel like that for me in Enshrouded. When I unlock an upgrade for an item, it just doesn't feel like the needle's being moved much farther. You also need to factor in how much goes into collecting some of the more critical resources, and all of a sudden, you may be left feeling like the juice just isn't worth the squeeze. One of my standard arrows that have a base damage of 11 gets upgraded at a base damage of 14 by crafting copper arrows instead. That's a difference of 3 damage. Yet the difficulty associated with obtaining those resources to create the upgraded arrows were much greater. If I wanted to upgrade my arrow to a poison arrow, the mob that drops the resources needed is so scarce that it's not even worth that upgrade. Enshrouded, it's currently in its early access release phase, so we can expect that the game will go through some changes and hopefully for the better. At the moment, Enshrouded needs some balance across a few aspects of the game. The clear-cut strongest builds are the caster builds, and that's by a mile. Sword and Shield lacks killing power. Archer builds are severely hindered by how much of a chore it is to plant bushes, wait for them to grow so that you can get your twigs, then smelt your ore for the arrow tips, which end up requiring coal, so it's like 4 to 5 resources tied to the arrows, and then the damage is not even all that great, even with the right build to support it. This sincerely makes me think of how much of a great mechanic it was for POW World to implement an automated system for making resources in your base while you go off and explore in the world. In Enshrouded, I often found myself stuck in the drudgery of preparing to go out to explore instead of being lost in the joys and wonder of being out of my base to delve into the handcrafted world that Keen has made for us in this game. It would be awesome if these NPCs could stop freeloading off of me and actually work on my base so that I could spend more time mapping the game and fighting its enemies. This is like the ultimate millennial simulator where you're stuck in the preparation phase and never get to go camping because you still need that one tool for the campfire to come in through Amazon, and you're finally waiting on that to come in so that you can go camping when it arrives. Well, here in Enshrouded, it felt like that for me, except I never got to go camping. Enshrouded has a huge world to explore. When I think about Enshrouded's levels, I think about one world where there's aerial exploration by means of your glider, which many of our utility tools can and will be upgraded to further enhance our ability to survey the world. There's travel that's mainly done at a ground level, and as you progress through the land, you'll be doing this on foot, as there's no mounts in this game. There are subterranean areas in the form of caves and crevices that exist in the world. The enemies are fun to engage in combat, but you'll end up noticing that there's definitely a lack of variety in enemy types. You'll encounter melee type enemies, range types, as well as boss and mini boss encounters. Combat in this game is really fun and easy to get lost in, although there's one particular enemy with 2 cleavers that's devilishly overtuned. Fast travel points are limited and spread apart from each other. You'll need to make intelligent use of setting up additional bases as fast travel points so that you can get around the map easier. I'd like to see a quality of life update where they add more travel points so that we can fast travel to, because oftentimes you'll be traveling very long and arduous distances to get to your quest markers. You'll need to brave the unknown and frequently risk your life and items to explore through the shroud, but this can make deaths painful at times when you know you've put in quite the trekking distance, and now you'll need to retrace your steps ever so carefully to recover your items and make it to your destination. One thing I can recommend is to not get rid of good duplicate weapons. Within the fog of the shroud and spread throughout the land are the enemies in Enshrouded, and fighting them will put wear on your weapons and cause them to break. Yes, they can easily be repaired by interacting with your workbench, but if your weapons break while en route to your objective, you'll be good to go by switching to another weapon. have a complicated relationship with games like Enshrouded. As a gamer and a person, I lack the creativity to create, but I have no shortage of creativity when it comes to destruction or altering narratives. I discovered this in my freshman year of high school. The drafting teacher asked us to create a dream home in AutoCAD, an architecture software. He comes to my desk and looks and leans in slowly and tells me like a savage, "I gave you limitless resources. You came up with a squared house?" That's when I knew I lacked the ability to build and create a world. But later on, I also learned that although I don't find enjoyment in creating a world, I do, however, find enjoyment in changing the world. So as a gamer, I enjoy creating my adventure by making choices that change the world around me. Enshrouded has this cool mechanic where you chop down or fell an enshrouded root. These roots are what create the shroud, which is like a poisonous gas that you can only be in for a limited amount of time. If you fell a root, the gas will fade away, making the immediate area safe. While in the shroud though, the game will provide you with different ways of extending this time by ways of consumable and talent points. But it's pretty much damn cool how Enshrouded creates a sense of urgency all of a sudden once you're in the shroud. What was a relaxing game where I'm kicking back in my chair, listening to a podcast, suddenly turns into an ass-clenching moment. You have 30 seconds and counting to get the fuck out of the shroud before you die and lose your shit. There were plenty of times where I died in the shroud. I'd take a turn down a path that looked interesting, and before I knew it, I had lost track of time, and now I was in hot pursuit for the safe zone outside of the shroud. It can be so easy to get lost in the world you're in. I think the immersion is so good in this game. The world is handcrafted and not procedurally generated. This was actually great to think about as I traversed the land, because I think to myself, I wonder, what could be in that tower over there? Then I'd say, okay, the developers probably wanted me to check that tower out. And I'd end up finding some great items and my curiosity was paid off. I think Enshrouded shines in allowing you to face the world at your pace and with so many different approaches to combat engagements. I enjoyed arriving at what looked like an enemy base or camp, then began to scout out the area, strategize my best point of entry. Depending on your particular build, stealth is possible, so is tanking, healing and spellcasting are possible as well, and you can combine them to find your best build and party composition if you're playing with others. I'll be really excited when we see some balancing amongst the classes so that we can bring the other builds in line with the casting build's current prowess. I very much enjoyed unlocking the power throughout the talent tree. I think it goes a long way towards adding depth and conflict through options like double jump, jump attacks, executions, increased critical hit, casting speed and stamina regeneration, just to name some of the options. There's even a survival-based tree that enhances your running distance and endurance, as well as improved food buffs, which in this game, food is pretty OP, and cooking is an easy mechanic to manage. I know that because I'm not big on building, I end up missing out on awesome features that games such as Enshrouded bring with the voxel system. Terrain manipulation and building is so easy, and I actually like how Enshrouded encourages us to think outside the box when looking to get to a certain point, because you should never forget about your trusty pickaxe, which will let you simply dig a hole through, under, or simply a path over any type of terrain that could be in your way. There are times where you'll be looking at your quest marker telling you that you've arrived at the location, but you realize that the treasure or root is underground. And away we go, digging towards the discovery of a whole different level under us with enemies ready to be like, hey bro, now we gotta fight. I'm excited for what Enshrouded will bring in the future. When I look at my experience and I try to be fair, I do end up being happy with my purchase. Enough for me to recommend it to others. Enshrouded has its shortcomings, but it's important to recognize its strengths. Considering that I paid $30 for this game, I paid nearly $1 an hour for my experience, and overall, I was satisfied. Yes, it's true I didn't finish the game, but that's also on me that I played a game which I don't often do well in due to the lack of a story-driven narrative. Despite the things I didn't enjoy, it was well worth my time, and after some quality of life updates and balancing, I'll be more than happy to return to Enshrouded to continue my adventure. Broskies, thank you all for watching my video. I love you guys. You guys really give me purpose. Kisses. Let me know what you guys think of the game in the comments. Let me know what you're curious about in this game, and maybe my discourse on the video sparks some interest for you to check out the game. Links in the description. Deuces.